we've got about 20 people so far, so let's go ahead and get started here. And Liz, why don't you go ahead and start us off with the first slide and stuff here too. But before I do that, if everyone could mute, during the presentation, there will be time afterwards for questions and so forth, and do that. But we've got a lot of material and stuff here, and Trish and I are really excited about being able to talk about this, and we hope that there's a lot of good value. We're excited that every other month um, the Nonprofit Alliance puts on this event, the Lunch and Learn, and we're hoping at some point we'll get back together again in person. But for right now, this is the best that we can do. And but I'd like to introduce then our topic for this time, the nonprofit board's finding and keeping the right people. And Tricia Simpson and myself will be alternating back and forth through the slides. And so we have a number of good examples, and courtesy of Tricia with the Sinclair Health Group there and so forth, that we have some examples and things on here too. And I'll throw in some from my experiences here too. So why don't we go ahead and get started here, and Liz, if you'll put it up here for us. Okay, that's our topic for today. And if we can go to the next slide. What we will be doing, and we're going into four areas here. First one we're going to talk about is assessment, and then we'll get into recruitment and orientation, and then into retention. And then we'll have a little list of things not to do at the end here. So Tricia, I will go ahead and turn it over to you to get started on the first category here.
All right, thank you, Richard. Good afternoon, and thank all of you for joining us. I would like to also say that we are planning on putting up the PowerPoint presentation on our website.
You like raspberry, don't you, Diane?
Yes, I love it.
Okay, I'll get you a couple of
Oh,
raspberries.
okay, I love those. Thank you.
Yeah.
Could somebody please mute their microphone?
I'll be back.
Okay, thank you. I will start again. I did want to let you know that this presentation will be put, the section of sessions on the slides will be put up on our website, so you will be able to get them later. We'll also pull out some of the things that we're suggesting and list them as separate documents on the website as well. Anything that I put up today, you are more than welcome to use, to take it, to modify it, to make it your own. So feel free. And I'd also like to say that at any point you would like to add something while we're talking about some of these areas, please use your space bar or unmute your microphone and join in, because we do want it to be interactive and you may have an idea that we're not expressing. So feel free to join in when the spirit moves you. I'd like to invite you also to jot down your questions so that you can ask them at an appropriate time. And Richard, I'm perfectly fine with having folks answer questions at the end of each of our sections if they're
okay. That would be fine. That'd be fine. Yeah,
I
no
think
problem.
they're probably more likely to be on their mind then. So I am feeling a whole lot more positive these days that we may be on the path to restoring some sense of normalcy, both at our nonprofits and in our own personal lives. And I'm happy to report that the Sinclair Health Clinic just had its first in-person board meeting. The board voted back in March to meet in person in April, and it's the first time in over a year. So I'm feeling really good about it. We had full attendance. One person did choose to participate virtually because we did leave that option there too, but we had great social distancing and it was so good to see everybody again. So I wish that for all of you sometime in the near future. All right, on to board assessment. we would like to encourage you to conduct a self-evaluation of your board when you're seeking to identify potential board members. And of course, that's where we start today, is finding the board members that we really need. And we're suggesting the first step is to assess who and what you already have. We want to encourage you to use this process, as it says here, to create a mix of skills, experiences, genders, ethnicity, and background that add valuable perspectives to the board. And Lizzie, if you would go to the next slide, please. All right, we had a little trouble getting this instrument onto the PowerPoint presentation. It is actually a 2-page vertical document, which we will make available to you if any of you would like to use it. Let me see how to move this up and down. Let's look at the first area. Could you move it up some to areas of expertise, Lizzie, just to highlight that area?
Do we have this on a, okay.
There you go. Can you, I'm sorry, never mind. Just go back to the other one. That's fine.
Okay,
We
I
can-
don't know that we have it where you can scroll. I'm sorry, Trisha.
Okay, we have it divided into sections, and the first section is areas of expertise. And all we're suggesting is that you give this document to your current board members. They use the first column to check all those items that apply to them. They are assessing their own areas of expertise. I adapted this from a board source publication that I got online at one point, and I have reviewed it several times. We have used it and we have changed it a little bit, adding other areas. For instance, we never had real estate on that areas of expertise, and yet we found out that we had a real need for having a realtor on our board for a number of different reasons. Interestingly enough, we didn't have medicine and healthcare, and we are the Sinclair Health Clinic. Of course, we were adapting somebody else's instrument, but we did add that also. And we do supply a place to say other and for you to specify something that we might not have thought of. All right, if you could go to the next slide, please. All right, the next section is resources, and you can see what those are there. I did add availability for active participation. It's something you really do need to try and assess when you're looking at new board members, whether they can actively participate or not. I've had people in the past, I've heard people in the past say to board members, we'd really like to have you on this board, and I know that you vacation for 4 months in the Bahamas every year, but come when you can, and we'd love to have you when we can get you. I would like to suggest that you not do that for many reasons. If you have someone that can't participate fully, it's going to make a problem for your board. We move down to community connections. I'm not going to read each of these myself to you. You can read down through those yourself. And then to the next slide, please. The personal style, gender, age, race, and ethnicity. Also at the bottom of our document that we use is a place for the signature of the individual and the date. I do like to save these. They're good to look back on, but we do a new set every time we're looking for a new group of board members, which we are doing right now. And we have just revised this slightly for our board members to choose. So what we have it so that we can send it out and they can fill it out and click it and send it back electronically, which makes it a whole lot easier, but you don't have to do it that way. You can simply do it at a board meeting or have them return it to you in the mail, however works well for you. And then you simply tally the numbers. You might be very surprised at what you find when you tally those numbers. We knew before, for instance, with Sinclair Health Clinic, that we have far more females than we have males, far more. So it's something that we'd want to look at to create more of a balance. Andy Gale's a former board member, knows that we don't have very many people in the 31 to 43 group, and we actually have no one in the 18 to 30 group. So, millennials do things differently than those of us who are way on the other end of that age list right there, the over 67. So we really should think about encouraging some of those people and looking for some of them to join as well. And let's see, what else did we find we didn't have? We've never had anybody from law enforcement, I believe, and that's something that I think we'll be looking at this time. So you just simply tally the numbers, put them in that column, and we have a board committee that is called the Board Development Committee. And we'll talk a little bit more about how you go about recruiting them, because that's something that Richard is going to talk about, and how we use this with the Board Development Committee to search out those new board members. Are there any questions about this checklist? Yes, Nancy, unmute yourself there, thanks.
Hi,
Hi.
Nancy Anderson. I'm with the AI board. I live in Lake Frederick. But I wanted to ask, on your chart, do you look for people with disabilities or ask for that?
We have not. We actually do have 2 people with disabilities on our board, but we don't put that as a category. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't or we couldn't. Anyone that would like to do that certainly can. Just as I said, obviously with Access Independence, that's going to be something you're going to be looking for. And just as when we first looked at this checklist, it didn't have medicine and healthcare on it, we added it. So, you know, obviously you would add it too. Again, we do have 2 individuals with disabilities on our board, but it's not on the checklist.
And I just wanted to add, I applaud you for noticing the youth voice that should be added, because that's a really important piece and something up and coming, because the youth 18 to 30 really do have different perspectives and bring a whole new look to things sometimes. So I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you reinforcing that. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Are there any other questions in reference to board assessment? Yes, ma'am.
Not really a question, just a comment. I'm Tammy Stevenson. I am with the Discovery Museum. And I don't know if you put it on here or if it's later, but I know that since I've come on to work here, we also have a financial commitment as part of a board. So I don't know if that's later on in here, but I know that's something that we put on. That's our board members understand that.
It is absolutely on here. You're going to be getting a handout that has the responsibilities
Okay.
of board members. It's both for individual board members and for the board altogether. It's an excellent point. We always ask that as well. So thank you, and we will be getting to that. Thank you. All right, I think we can, you know, one other point that I would like to make, and that is that you also should be asking, I'm looking for it. Hold on just a minute. Not only do you want to look for certain skills, you also want to look at whether they can actively participate or not. I mentioned that earlier, but I would like to stress again, it's not on this checklist other than available for active participation, but you really do have to have people that will commit and know what that commitment is. And that brings up another point, Tammy, I think that you might be heading towards also as one of the things you sit down and talk to a prospective board member about that, because it does no good for your board if you have the best person in the world and they meet all of these characteristics that you were looking for. If they're not going to attend on a regular basis, it does you no good, and it jeopardizes your chances of having a full quorum at your meetings and being able to conduct business. So I will go ahead and move on to Richard then. Richard?
Okay, thank you, Tricia.
Mhm.
Okay, board member recruitment. Really, this, as Tricia said, this is very key when you start to consider, you know, getting new board members. And how do you do it? What do you put together, and you know, where do you find people, and do you have a committee internally and so forth? Well, the first thing you need to start off with, and we did this with a number of other boards, is to put together a position description as you would with any other job within the organization. You normally put together a description. Well, this is kind of a description of what the expectations are of what you want that board member to do in that position. Typically, this is sent out when you begin to recruit, look at various people. You say, okay, here's a position description of what you might want to do, or are expected to do on the board there. So along with that description, you also must decide what sort of expertise, as Trish had indicated on the previous form there, we looked at, what of expertise you're going to need for the organization. You need whether financial, marketing, IT, law, a number of things here. So you're looking at, what does it need to help facilitate the organization. And then a lot of times that expertise can get relied upon by people within the organization. If they need some expertise, they can go to the board and say, hey, what's your thoughts and so forth on here too. So you need to get a variety of expertise would be the suggestion. Now, how do you go about finding potential board members? Well, interesting enough, my experience has been that it's been referrals from current board members. They may know of other people in the community that may want to be part of that organization or have had expressed an interest in that organization. So a lot of times you have current board members. Now, also, there are other formal ways of doing it. When I was with the chamber, we actually had a nominating committee. And that committee got together once a year because every year the chamber always had 3 or 4 open board positions. And what we started doing was to go ahead and gather referrals from our current board members, because we would talk to them about, hey, we're up for new terms and so forth coming up here. So we would get them referred to the nominating committee. Then the nominating committee would again assess, everyone that was referred to them. There would also be a member of the committee that would go out and interview potential board members, and then you come back and report back to the committee of what they found and whether they think that person would be a good fit or not. Typically, the chamber will always like to get at least 2 per open board position at this point. And so the committee then would go through and determine what are the values of each of the candidates that were applying, and then decide from there which ones would be good. And then either the chairman of the committee or the CEO of the organization might even go out and do a little further review and then determine that final selection from that standpoint. And this would start typically several months before the term would start. So you give enough time to go through and do there. And then once you've decided on the board, on the new board members, really best practice is then to have it voted upon by the executive committee. And then if you want, you can, the chamber did, the executive committee then would present the selected candidates for the board to the full board, and there would be acceptance upon that. And then normally you might have an event at the beginning of the year, say, for your organization. And then at that point, you would present the new board members to your organization and do that. So anyway, is there any
Richard?
other area of question?
May I
Yes,
jump in here?
go right ahead, Tricia.
I think one of the things that we found when Richard and I were talking about this presentation was it was interesting how differently some of the organizations he'd been associated with and some of the organizations I've been associated with go about this process. So for the Sinclair Health Clinic now, what we have, as I mentioned it before, a board development committee. We would take the results of the self-assessment that tells us where our strengths are and hopefully tells us what our needs might be. Then we sit down with the committee and review the results of the self-evaluation after having shared the results with the board. And then the committee reviews any suggestions that might have come from board members, as Richard has suggested, also from the executive director. We do take suggestions from the executive director, and also any that our board development committee folks may have come up with when looking at the needs assessment. We then have the chairman contact those individuals for an interview. And the board development committee plus the chair of that committee sit down for a personal interview. Now, the last time, no, you know what, we did do them in person even during COVID. We were able to do it with distancing, but we sit down for an interview with those individuals, talk about what is involved in becoming a member, including the expectation for attendance, including the expectation for donating to the organization each year, and nitty-gritty things like whether we meet monthly, quarterly, the time, etc., because any one of those things could knock someone out of consideration if it doesn't fit with their schedule. We then answer any questions they have. We do give them, Richard, is it okay if we move to the board responsibilities
Sure.
checklist?
Right ahead.
Lizzie, if you wouldn't mind bringing up the next slide, please. Oh, can you drop further down?
There you go.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so the first is a list of the responsibilities of the board in total. And then underneath that, and if you would drop to the next one or drop down, we'll look at the individuals. So there are the responsibilities of an individual board member. Those are the things that we review with the individual when we are trying to recruit them to the board. You'll see on there all the obvious things, including attendance. Might not be so obvious to become familiar with the rules of procedure for meetings, Robert's Rules of Order. And by the way, I will tell you that I do have a cheat sheet for Robert's Rules of Order that's on one sheet, and didn't have it electronically right now, but I can prepare it electronically and put it on our website for you to get. It's really saved a lot of people to have that one-page sheet sometimes, and sometimes it's helped me too. You'll notice that the very last thing on that list of responsibilities of an individual board member is to donate financially to the organization on an annual basis according to the member's means. There are many grants now that ask you in their narrative questions how many or what percentage of your board makes a financial donation every year to the organization. They want to know, they want to see that your board members are supporting your organization. Be quick to add, we're not talking about, it might be $2,000 for one person, it might be $50 for another person. It's according to the member's means, but at least they are showing that they are interested in the success of the organization, and will do it by making a financial donation. If you go back up to the responsibilities of the board, down one, there we go. So that's just an overview of the general responsibilities of the board, so that potential members understand that they're going to be responsible for hiring and setting the compensation and evaluating the executive director. They do need to understand that they are responsible for that, that the development and implementation of the strategic plan does come from them, from the board, that they need to monitor fiscal management and maintain accountabilities to funders and to donors, that they will be the ones who are reviewing and approving the annual budget, approving major organizational decisions, ensuring that adequate resources are available to the organization, and so on. Any questions about, and again, once again, anyone is welcome to take this, redo it, make it suit your organization in any way you like. You have free reign to take this document and use it. We hope you will. Any questions? All right.
Okay.
Let me just, can I show for a minute? Well, I won't do that.
You want to do that? Or you want to go back to the orientation?
Let's go back to the if you had anything more to say in reference to recruitment, or if we had questions about recruitment.
Yeah, any further questions about the recruiting? It's a very key process because, you know, it's very important you get the right person. You don't want someone being there for a couple of years and just moving on to something else. That's not what you want to do. You want someone there for a long period that can make a significant contribution to the organization. And that's what you're really looking for.
I have a,
Oh, go ahead.
do you want the questions at the end or do you want them now? How do you want this?
I would prefer to have them after each section, so they're fresh in your mind and fresh in everyone else's mind about the discussion we're having, unless it's something we haven't just, you know, that we're going to discuss later, but go ahead, try it.
So this is just a general question. So what if, because we have a combination of new board members and old board members. So how is this possible to use this kind of as a refresher and a reminder, and also for like a onboarding? Because we're in the midst of stuff right now, but this is very helpful information, especially as, you know, moving forward.
Absolutely, Elaine. Actually, one of the slides you're going to see is the table of contents from the orientation notebook that we do at the clinic. This is something that actually Deb Taylor asked me for the last time we talked about this at the Nonprofit Alliance. So I put it together, and one of the things that is in the orientation notebook that we give to people is that roles and responsibilities list, but it's absolutely great to give it out occasionally to your board members that have maybe been there for a while and might need a reminder. There are probably a number of things in the orientation notebook that they do need reminders about, and later on you're going to hear me suggest that you do some very brief trainings occasionally for your current board members. Maybe those have been there for a long time, and that would be another place that you could slide that in.
Okay.
I think I'll be able to go a little bit further into that on the next slide here, and we'll talk about, you know, how you keep your current members and your new members, you know, working together, you know, going forward. So.
Okay.
Okay. And so coming into the orientation, you've got new members on board, new board members. You know, how do you get them to know what the organization does and everything? Hopefully they do have some information ahead of time. However, and I'll take an example from Blue Ridge Hospice. What was done there, we've just a brief overview is that when a new board member comes on, what we have is each significant person on the staff or the leadership team would actually make a presentation of what their particular area does. And let me jump back a little bit. Is we normally have to try and set a time. The best thing is when you do an orientation, you set up a separate time that's convenient for the members, and you bring them in as close to the beginning of their term as possible, if not even before their term starts. And you kind of go through kind of in more detail what the organization does. And this is every part of the organization. And please always keep it current. You know, if there's people that have left and so forth. So you bring in the current people that are working there, and you bring in the current procedures organization wise, so forth that is going on in here. And who should, and this is key, who should actually be presenting the orientation? I think it'd be a key board member. If not the chairman, that'd be great. But you also want to involve all the key leadership people in the organization. And so that you can create that relationship then between the board member and the organization's leaders at this point. So it's very important to get that relationship going, because there are times when someone from an organization may present something at a board meeting, and you'll get a chance to know them and ask the questions and do a little bit better and so forth on there. So anyway, I felt that the orientation was really good. It has to be timely. You know, like you can't wait in there. Now, going back to your current board members, it may be good to actually have some of the board members every once in a while coming back in and sitting in on the orientation. you know, there may be questions, there may be areas of the organization that maybe the current board member wasn't quite fully aware of what was going on and so forth, and can also provide some additional information too, if need be. So I think it's good to always have your current board members, maybe not been in it for a year or two, maybe just to sit in and keep current with what's going on. So Elaine, did that help answer some questions and things?
It did, thanks.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions on the orientation piece?
Richard, would it be all right with you if we move to the
Let's-
handbook table of
Let's
contents?
go ahead and move to the handbook, which is a key part that's given out right at the orientation, if not sooner. So,
And I know that not everybody chooses to do a physical handbook, but right now we do choose to do it. And I will tell you, for myself personally, I've held on to mine and I use it as my Bible for the clinic and add to it. If I get a new one the next year, I transfer over the things that I put in the other one. For instance, I keep all the meeting minutes. I keep them all in one place behind a tab that you'll see just coming up so I can refer back to them easily. So this is the table of contents. In parentheses, I've put a couple things just to explain to you what it is, but our first tab is the board, and we find it really helpful for the board members to have all in one place on one sheet, one grid, a listing of the board members, and it does include their terms of office. It's very helpful so you don't lose sight because you have people coming on at different times. Sometimes they're finishing somebody's term of office that went off the board. So you might have to look a little differently as to when their term of office is or when they need to stand for election again. So it includes their addresses, their phone numbers, their email addresses, their terms of office, their employment, and their committee membership. Now, again, we do require all of our board members to belong to at least one committee. So all the committee memberships are listed there as well. Then there's that board member responsibilities list again for them to take a look at. Next is the common nonprofit board governance mistakes. You're going to find that document at the end of our presentation today, and I will be providing a fuller list with all the explanation under each one to be put up on our website also if you wanted it. And then there's the Robert's Rules of Order cheat sheet that you can talk a little bit about. Most people have attended meetings that use Robert's Rules of Order, but occasionally you get someone who hasn't. So that they feel comfortable going into their first meeting, it's nice that you talk to them about it just a bit. The next section is very important to me, and that's clinic history. It's something you might not have thought about. Our nonprofits, and I can think of so many of them that are on this call today, are so rich in their history. When I received a big box of former documents from the previous board chair, I finally made the opportunity to go through it and found out that there were things about the history of the clinic that I did not know, I'd never heard. So I did revise our free medical clinic, because that's what we used to be known as. I did revise that, make it much longer. I tried to incorporate the names of the people who were instrumental in formulating our free medical clinic, now the Sinclair Health Clinic, just to make sure that those names and those people and those organizations are not forgotten, and that from time to time we remember to thank them. So for instance, the Sinclair Health Clinic started in the basement of the First Presbyterian Church. One day a week, they brought out their white folding tables, folded them up, put a sheet on top of it, and it was used as examining tables. And they hung sheets to make partitions. I mean, I think that's interesting and good for people to know. If you look down to number 3, the staff and personnel policies and procedures, we do want them to be comfortable with knowing when we're talking about various staff or various positions, we want them to know what their names are. They're there with their position titles. As organizational charts change, we try to, or as positions change, we try to change the organizational chart. We also give a holiday schedule and the personnel policies and procedures. If you could drop the slide down, Lizzie, please. we have a description of all our programs. We have quite a few programs: primary care, laboratory, behavioral health, prenatal care, community health, pharmacy programs. It's a lot to ingest at one orientation. So to have it down with a brief description of each so that people can look at that in their own time is really a good thing for them to become more familiar with the program. And of course, I should have mentioned at the outset, one of the first things we do is give the individuals a tour of the facility. You can't leave that out. Finance and fundraising is our 5th tab. We do give them the current budget. We show them what a sample monthly finance report looks like. We give the monthly expenditures and revenue. We give a year to date. We also give a summary of our donors for that month. And we also give a summary of the vendors to whom we've made payments for that month. We really take our fiduciary responsibilities very seriously. And we want our new board members to do that as well. And we want them to have as much information as they possibly can have.
Tricia, I just want
Yes.
to also say in this section here too, is I found it pretty good is that when people attend their board meetings, normally they might bring a book or something that will give them each month's reports and so forth so that they can compare and look back at what has gone on and financially throughout the year and so forth. But it's good to kind of have that as a context when you do go to the board meetings, to have it as a context for previous meetings in case there's questions or anything that come up. So
Excellent point, really excellent point. We do include our most recent audit report. We do have 2 endowment funds, so we have the history of those endowment funds so that when we talk about the Custer Endowment Fund, our folks will know what the heck we're talking about. And then we do have our investment policy statements because we do have investments. Governance documents, I can't say how important it is to make sure your members have access to the organization's bylaws. You might not hand them the copy. You might simply tell them where they go to find it online, but they really do need to have the bylaws. And Richard, to your point, that's another good thing to have with you each time because questions do come up about whether the board can legally or correctly do something that they want to do. And you need to take a look in the bylaws just to see if they're going about it appropriately. And
one other point on there too. Normally you'll find organizations do amendments to the bylaws. And I found we've gotten in trouble when someone didn't have the most current copy and didn't have all the amendments, that when you start talking about changes to the bylaws, you should have at least your file up to date with all the amendments to the bylaws on there too. So
absolutely excellent point. And I will freely admit that when we always have to submit a copy of the current bylaws with our audit report. And this time I did have to go back in because in the last couple months, we had made some changes, which we had documented, but we hadn't updated the bylaws themselves, saying when it was updated and what those updates were. So a really important thing that you make sure, because you frequently don't keep, I've seen groups frequently not keep track of that. And then when they go to try and make another amendment, they're wait, didn't we talk about that one other time? So really, it's easier for you in the long run if you update them as you go, as Richard just said. You want to make sure you have your conflict of interest policy and form. Any board governance policies, we give just the table of contents. It's very lengthy, and we give the show them where they can go to get the whole board governance policies booklet. And then if hopefully you have a strategic plan, and hopefully you will include that in there as well. And Lizzie, if you could pull up the slide, please. Oops. Let's see, what did we miss?
that was just
A sample. Yeah,
meeting.
I do put in a sample meeting agenda and a sample of the minutes so they can see what they're going to look like. And I will admit also, I couldn't fit number 8 on there, but I do have a number 8 tab, and the number 8 tab is miscellaneous. And I've actually found a number of things to put behind that tab, not the least of which is a glossary of terms. So all those acronyms that have the alphabet soup of letters that your poor new board members come in and say, they're afraid to say, what is that? They can turn to their glossary of terms and discover real quickly. And I'm always shocked to see how many things we have on that list of glossary of terms, and it does need to be updated from time to time as well.
Trish,
Yes.
can I add something?
Yes, who are we talking to?
Jim Montano.
Yep.
Hi,
You might want
Jim.
to add important vendors and community partners. I think that's something that I'm at the Winchester Rescue Mission, I think we would want to have in our board handbooks. For instance, who are our auditors and financial people who prepare our 1099s, those things, and our insurance agents, other community partners that we work with, such as Sinclair. And, that
Thanks
nature.
for that plug, Jim. That's a great idea. Thank you very much. Rich?
Yeah, and Jim, along with that point too, is that most organizations have to file a 990 report. And that is something that may or may not want to be included in with your financial reports. It probably should be, in there, but at least your finance person should have that available and be able to provide a copy of that for everyone too. So, yeah.
Are we finished with your section?
I think so at this point, unless anybody else has any handbooks. I have a question for everyone about the handbooks. Is there somebody, how do you make sure that it's all prepared? Do you have someone that prepares them all and gives it out, or do you, and the agendas and stuff? Is there an admin and support for the CEO? Is there someone to help support the board? How do you take care of these things? I'm just curious what everybody's done. Who handles that for you?
Would you like me to answer for the clinic?
Well, if you want to answer, Tricia, that's fine. I was just curious what anybody else had on there too. Who takes care of these?
I wasn't going to jump in, but I didn't hear anybody else jumping in. I'll
Okay.
wait and see if somebody else wants to speak first. Christine says that the executive director handles in our
Right.
organization.
Okay.
All right, I'm going to jump.
Okay.
In our organization, the board chair has made certain that the orientation book is updated every year or every time we need to do an orientation with a new board member. And I do it in conjunction, with the executive director. So months before we knew we were going to need one, I sat down with her and reviewed the sections that needed updating. So I just mentioned to you that I took the time to rewrite the board history, so we knew that. I myself updated the member directory. I already had the board member responsibilities list, already had the common nonprofit board governance mistakes, but things like the staff list with position titles and the organizational chart, the executive director updated. The holiday schedule, she made sure we had the correct one in there. She did the small descriptions of each of the programs because I wanted to make sure that we described them the way she wanted them described. So she did that part. And then the rest, I guess, as I already admitted to you, I updated the bylaws to make sure we had the most recent in there. And so it was a collaboration between the two of us, but when it came to actually running them off, because although we were just orienting one new board member at the time, we wanted a copy for the person that did the orientation. And at Sinclair, that was happened to be Andy Gale's dad, Bob Gale, who is our vice chair of the committee and chair of the program development committee. But the chair usually attends as well. I could not attend on that particular day, so he did it by himself, but in other times we've had more board members. I think it's been a little bit different with COVID. But as far as running them off, we do have an administrative specialist that works just part-time. like 33 hours a week. And she assisted with the running off. Once we had everything in place, then she ran it off.
Okay. Anybody else have any input or anything as to how to do it differently? Okay. Well, let's go on, I guess, to the next slide at this point.
All right, so
Okay.
now you've done everything. You've assessed them, you've recruited them, you've oriented them. Now, how do you hold on to them? Because that's an important factor, I think, for all of us. I've provided you again with a list of bullets, but as I mentioned before, I also have a longer document that does have narrative under each of the bullets. And if you give us, I don't know, do you think it's going to take us about a week for Tom to get this up on the website, Richard? Or less?
I think by the end of the week, he should have it up on the website. So.
Okay, so you can go to, actually, if you just go to nansv.org, and that shows at the bottom of your screen there, you can pull up our website and you can look under the documents section, I believe, and you should be able to find these things. But I've provided just the bullets here. The first we already know about, provide a comprehensive orientation. We've talked about that completely. The next is my suggestion, and it might not be the way you do it, and I would be interested in hearing the way you do it. But we ask that the executive director send the board packets with agendas and meeting materials, and I will let you know that's the agenda. It's the minutes from the last meeting. It's all the finance reports. We meet the week before, the finance committee meets the week before our meeting. So it's all their reports. And then our executive director does an executive director written report each time as well. So our executive director is asked to send those the Friday before our meeting. We meet on Wednesday mornings at 8:15 in the morning. So we ask that those other things be sent out Friday to give people review kinds of questions or